Okay, so we're going to work the review for Unit 7. Number 1 says solve by factoring, right? Remember, you can use the book on the test, and so any notes that you want to put, make sure you include onto your book. If you're solving by factoring, you need to move everything to one side. So I'm going to minus 11x, I'm going to minus 6. So I have 2x squared minus 11x minus 6 equals 0. Then we're going to factor, so I'm going to slide the 2 to the end, make that a 12. So I'm coming up with the factors of 12 that are going to make 11. And so that's 1 and 12. Now I want to make it a negative 11, so I'm going to do negative 1 and negative 12, positive 1. So x minus 12, x plus 1, and then because you slid the 2 in the beginning, you have to go back and divide by it. So your factors are going to be x minus 6, and then we're going to bottoms up this one, 2x plus 1. Now it says to solve. So once you factor it, you take both of your factors and equal them to 0. And so then your final answer is going to be x equals 6. And this one we're going to have to minus 1 and then divide by 2. And so you get x equals negative 1/2. All right, so if I were you, I'd pause the video, come down to your number 1, and try to solve by factoring just like I did. All right, number 2 says solve by completing the square. So first I'm going to minus the 2 to the other side. X squared plus 6x equals negative 2. Now I'm going to come up with a number that I add to both sides to make this a perfect square. And so to do that, you're going to divide this by 2, and you get 3, and then you square it, and you get 9. So we're going to add 9 to both sides to complete the square. All right, so on the right side, negative 2 plus 9 is going to be 7. And this guy now is a perfect square. I can write that as x plus 3 squared, because 3 times 3 is 9, 3 plus 3 is 6. And remember, the trick is that number will always go inside. So then you're going to square root. Every time you square root, you need to put a plus minus, and if it's negative, it needs an I. All right, so this one just needs a plus minus, square root of 7, and then last step is to minus 3, which I'm going to stick here in the front, negative 3 plus minus the square root of 7. All right, so if I were you, I'd pause your video and try your number 2 down here. Number 3 is solve using the quadratic formula. So quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root, b squared minus 4ac all over 2 times a. So a is going to be 1, b is 2, c is 6. A comes from the x squared, b comes from the x, c comes from the number by itself, and I'm going to put that in the formula. So negative 2 plus minus the square root, 2 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. All right, so I'm going to type in the discriminant, which is everything underneath your square root, not the square root itself. All right, so 2 squared minus 4 times 1 times 6, and I get negative 20. All right, so because it's negative, I'm going to take the I out. And 20 does not have a perfect root, so I'm going to just leave it alone like this. All right, so pause your video, try your number 3. All right, now when I'm going to number 4, it says solve using square roots. So I'm going to draw my line, and I'm just trying to get x by itself. So if you add or subtract, if you can add or subtract, do that first, then do multiplying and dividing. So I'm going to divide by negative 2, drop down my x squared, and I get negative 3. Then get rid of the square by square rooting. And so I get plus minus I square root of 3. All right, so I would pause your video and try Your number 4? All right, it says solve the inequality, represent the solution on a number line. So number 5, I wrote by hand. I was going to show you how to do it by hand. If you want to use the calculator like we did in speed dating, you are welcome to. All right, but if you're doing it by hand, your first step is to get everything equal to 0. So x squared plus 4x minus 5 less than or equal to 0. All right, then you're going to find your solution.